Big thanks to Lit RPG Reads and Paul Bello, fine fellow, for giving us the idea for today's deep dive. I was DMing a game just the other night, and one of my players, they were playing this really brooding, secretive rogue. And through the whole session, they barely said a word. But everything about them, the way they moved, how they held themselves, even just fidgeting with their dice, it totally spoke volumes about the character's anxiety and inner turmoil. It was captivating, and it really got me thinking about how much we can say without ever saying anything. And wouldn't you know it, I found this really cool article on Lit RPG Reads called Mastering Non-Verbal RPG Roleplay, a guide to character body language.
It's funny how often we kind of forget about that unspoken word in our games and in real life, too. This article goes deep on that. It emphasizes how nonverbal communication can add a whole other dimension to role-playing and bring our characters to life in a way that words just can't. Like, it's the difference between reading a script and actually watching a play.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the article talks about this thing called the character movement matrix. It's this framework that shows how different postures can communicate so much about a character's emotional state, their social status, even their personality.
The matrix is really interesting. It gives you a way to think about your movement strategically, which is something I think even experienced role players. We don't always consciously think about it. We might slouch if we're playing a sad character or stand tall if they're confident. But this matrix really breaks it down and gives you a roadmap to use posture to tell the story.
Yeah. And they give these great examples of different postures, like the noble archetype, head held high, movements all controlled and deliberate, just projecting authority. Then you have the rogue, fluid, adaptable, able to blend in or stand out. And of course, the warrior, solid, grounded, always ready for action. Oh, and we can't forget the wizard, detached, contemplative, lost in thought. I bet you can picture all those just from the description.
What I think is cool is that it's not just about, like, striking a pose. It's about showing your character's background, their training, personality. It's like muscle memory for your character. A knight, they've spent their whole life training for combat. They're going to stand and move differently from a scholar who's always hunched over books. And just by taking on a certain posture, you can say a lot about who your character is without saying anything.
I remember this one game I was playing. I was this grizzled old warrior, all battle-scarred and world-weary. I made a point to stand with my feet apart, shoulders squared, always with a hand on the pommel of my sword. It wasn't even just about looking the part. It really changed how I played the character. I felt more grounded, decisive, ready to deal with anything.
That's such a good example. Your posture can affect not just how other people see your character, but how you play them. It becomes this feedback loop where what you do with your body changes how you make choices in the game. It's like stepping into a costume, but for your whole self.
It's not even just posture that matters. The article goes into facial expressions, too, and how even tiny changes can make a big difference in how people see your character. Like, think about it. A raised eyebrow, a little frown, the tiniest smirk. Those can say so much.
For sure. And they talk about micro expressions, like those fleeting, almost subconscious movements that give away how someone's really feeling. Even when they're trying to hide it, it's like, you just know someone's lying. Even if they sound convincing, it's their micro expressions that give them away.
It's like poker.
Yeah.
But for emotions. Imagine you're playing a character trying to act calm, but secretly they're freaking out. You can use those micro expressions to hint at what's really going on. It adds tension and mystery, like subtext for your character.
It makes your character so much deeper and more complex. Like the difference between a flat character and one that feels real. Flawed, human.
Speaking of human, the article also talks about how we often forget about hand gestures, even though they add so much to how a character comes across. It's easy to just sit with your hands in your lap, but hands are super expressive, like a rogue twirling a dagger, a wizard using these intricate hand movements to cast a spell, a warrior with a firm grip on their weapon.
It's interesting how hands can tell a story all by themselves, especially with spellcasting. The article says a spellcaster's movements can show their personality and how they feel about magic. Do they cast spells carefully and in control, or do they go wild? Every gesture tells a story.
I played a game once where I was a sorcerer, and they got their power from the elements. I decided to come up with specific hand gestures for each element. Like fire, I would snap my fingers and make these jabbing motions, almost like I was making the flames. But water, I would use these flowing circular motions, like I was guiding the water. It helped me imagine the magic and feel more connected to my character's powers.
That's awesome. You basically made a sign language for magic. It makes the game so much more immersive and creative. And any player can do something like that. It doesn't matter what class or abilities they have.
Exactly. It's all about being creative and finding ways to use your body to tell a story. And it's not even just about individual gestures, it's how you put those together with your posture and facial expressions to make one believable character.
That's where aligning voice and posture is so important. It's about making a character who feels real. A confident character, they'll probably have a strong voice and stand in an open way. But someone timid might speak softly and be more closed off.
Like all the pieces need to fit together to make the whole picture. And when they do, it's amazing.
It's like watching a really skilled actor. They don't just say their lines, they embody the character. That's what we should all be going for in our games.
It doesn't have to be as hard as it sounds either. The article has some good tips on practicing, like try different postures and voices in front of a mirror, or pay attention to how your body language changes your voice. It's about being aware of yourself.
It's like taking acting lessons. But for your RPG character, the more you practice, the more natural it becomes.
Exactly. So we've talked about posture, facial expressions, and hand gestures. It's clear that nonverbal stuff plays a huge role in how we portray our characters. But what about social dynamics? How does social status fit in?
Well, the article gets into this really cool idea of how your social status can come across in how you move. Imagine the refined, deliberate movements of a noble compared to the everyday movements of a commoner. Their whole way of being is different.
For sure. It's like the noble knows where they stand in society and how people see them, but the commoner is focused on just getting through the day. It's subtle, but it's a big deal.
And this is so important for RPGs because it means we can make character interactions more nuanced and realistic. Imagine a character trying to impress a lord. They'll probably be more successful if they move with the confidence of someone who's used to being around powerful people.
Like they're speaking the language of social status through their body. It adds a whole new way to think strategically in the game.
Absolutely. Next time you're playing a high-status character, watch how they carry themselves. Don't fidget or do anything that makes them look nervous.
It can really change how other characters see them. And that can change the whole game.
Speaking of impact, I think it's important to say that nonverbal communication isn't just about getting your character right. It's also about making the game more immersive and engaging for everyone.
Definitely. It's about building the world together, brick by brick, gesture by gesture.
When everyone's tuned in to each other's body language, there's this synergy that happens. The story comes alive in a way that goes beyond the words, like you're all speaking the same language, even without saying anything.
And that's when the magic happens.
It's like when you're watching a great movie, you get so caught up you forget you're even watching a screen. That's the kind of immersion we can get in RPGs with nonverbal communication.
And it's not just about entertaining ourselves. It's about connecting more deeply with the other people at the table.
When you're paying attention to those nonverbal cues, you're talking to each other on a deeper, more intuitive level, like reading minds, but through body language.
And that kind of connection can lead to those really amazing game moments where you're not just playing a game, you're living a story together.
It's about creating a shared experience that goes beyond the rules and the dice. It's about making friendships that can last a lifetime.
That's what makes role-playing so special. It's not just escapism, it's about connection. It's about finding people who love telling stories and going on adventures. And through those experiences, we create something truly magical.
I love that. I think that's a good place to stop for now. We've talked about so much: posture, facial expressions, hand gestures, the whole thing about social status.
And we're just getting started. There's so much more to explore when it comes to nonverbal communication.
For sure. But before we go any further, I'm curious to hear from you. What are some of the most memorable times you've seen nonverbal role-playing in your games?
That's a great question. One that pops into my head right away was from a game where I was playing a paladin. We were fighting this incredibly powerful demon, and things were not looking good for us. My paladin, she was known for being stoic and super strong in her faith. But in that moment, as we're facing this terrifying creature, I decided to have her tremble a little, just the tiniest tremor in her hand as she held her holy symbol.
That's such a powerful image, showing that inner struggle between faith and fear. Did the other players notice?
Oh yeah, they definitely noticed. It sparked this whole conversation about what it meant for this character, who's usually so unshakable, to show that tiny bit of vulnerability. It added so much to the scene, and gave the other players a chance to connect with my character in a deeper way.
That's the perfect example of how even a small nonverbal cue can turn a fight into a moment with real emotion. It's about those choices that show the cracks in a character's armor, the things they're trying to hide, the emotions that are bubbling under the surface.
Exactly. It's those small details that make a character feel real. And the article talks about using different levels of intensity when you're showing emotions.
Right. You can have those subtle hints, like a little change in your face or a shift in how you're standing. Those are great for when you want to suggest something's going on without saying it out loud.
Like imagine a character who's jealous, but they're trying to hide it while their friend is getting praised. Maybe they force a smile, but their jaw is clenched. Or they make tiny fists under the table.
Exactly. And then there are times when you need to go all out. Maybe your character saw something horrible or they're in a huge argument. That's when you see shouting, pacing, big dramatic gestures.
One time, my character's village was attacked by bandits. We had spent weeks building up this whole community, and to see it all destroyed, it was awful. I didn't even have to think about how to react. My character just broke down sobbing, fell to her knees in the wreckage. It was raw, emotional, and it totally changed how the game felt.
I bet that raw emotion, showing it through what you did and not just what you said, really hit the other players hard. It's about tapping into those basic human experiences and letting them flow through your character.
It's about letting go of the script and just reacting in the moment. That's when the best RPG moments happen. When you're not just playing the character, you're being them, body and soul.
And it's not just about individual characters either. Think about how one person's emotions can affect the whole group.
Right. If one character is grieving, it can give everyone else permission to be sad or angry too. Or, if someone is super confident and determined, it can inspire others to step up and face the challenge with them.
It's about those unspoken connections that bring a group together, that feeling of having a shared purpose. And those connections are often made through those moments of vulnerability shown through our body language.
It's about building a community at the table, a place where everyone feels safe to express themselves, with words and without words. And that sense of community makes such a difference in creating a truly immersive game.
So well said. And speaking of immersion, let's remember that our RPGs are full of creatures that aren't human at all.
Oh yeah, elves, dwarves, orcs, dragons, all kinds of fantastical beings. The article mentions this cool idea of species-specific movement.
It's about thinking beyond how humans move and express themselves and tapping into the unique physicality of different creatures. Imagine showing the grace of a tabaxi stalking their prey, or a kenku mimicking a conversation they overheard.
I love that. It's about showing your character's personality through how they move, even if they're not human.
Exactly. It forces us to be creative and get outside our comfort zone. How would a huge Goliath move compared to a little gnome? How would a dragonborn show anger compared to a halfling?
It's about thinking how their body, their culture, their whole being affects how they move and express themselves.
And it can lead to some really fun interactions. Imagine adventurers trying to negotiate with a tribe of orcs. Orcs, known for their strength and aggression, might stand arms crossed, legs apart, chins out to show they're dominant.
And the adventurers, depending on how they want to play it, might copy that posture to show they're not scared. Or they might be more submissive to avoid a fight.
It's about understanding body language and using it to make those small interactions feel real.
Like we're adding another layer of detail to the game. We're not just telling a story, we're painting a picture with our bodies.
And that picture can be really powerful. Imagine a group of adventurers in a dark, creepy forest. Twisted trees, thick mist. The only sounds are rustling leaves and crows in the distance.
And as they go deeper, they start to notice how their friends are moving differently. Shoulders hunching up, eyes darting around, hands going for weapons.
Without a word being spoken, the tension builds, the atmosphere gets thicker, and the players are pulled deeper into the story.
It's like those horror movie moments when you know something bad is coming, but you don't know what or when. And that feeling is made even stronger by the character's body language.
It's a masterclass in suspense, all done without words.
And it's something we can all learn to do in our games.
Absolutely. The article says practice makes perfect when it comes to this stuff. It's about getting better, understanding more, and pushing ourselves to explore those little details of expression.
It's like learning a new language, but with your body. And the more fluent you are, the better your games will be.
And the best part is, you don't need anything special to start practicing. The article suggests simple things, like using a mirror to watch yourself and get better at expressions and gestures.
Right, like having your own acting coach in your bathroom.
And you can practice with your group, too.
Yeah. The article talks about scene practice, where you all work together to see how different movements affect the story.
It's a chance to try new things, see what works and what doesn't. And most importantly, it's a chance to have fun and learn from each other.
It's about making a space where everyone feels good about taking risks,
Yeah.
and trying new things.
That's where you really grow, when you get out of your comfort zone and allow yourself to be vulnerable, to mess up, to learn from each other.
It's about enjoying the journey, not just the destination. And the journey of getting good at nonverbal communication in RPGs can lead to amazing discoveries about ourselves and about the power of stories.
Beautifully said. And as we go deeper into this, let's remember that the little things can often make the biggest impact. It's not always about those big, sweeping gestures. Sometimes the smallest things say the most.
Like a tiny twitch of the lips, a slight narrowing of the eyes, a quiet sigh.
Those are the things that make our characters feel more real, relatable, and ultimately more human.
It's like we're peeling back the layers of an onion, finding the hidden depths beneath the surface.
And sometimes those hidden depths can be really surprising. The article says even small things, like the way someone holds their head or how they walk, can tell you a lot about their social status, their emotions, who they are at their core.
It's like reading a secret language written on the body. And the better we understand that language, the more we understand our characters and the world they live in.
Think about a king meeting with his advisors. He might sit on his throne, back straight, chin up, looking steady, all to show his authority and confidence.
But if we look closely, we might see small things that tell a different story.
Maybe his hand shakes a little when he reaches for his wine, or his brow furrows for a second when he listens to his advisors.
Those are the things that tell us how heavy his responsibility is, the burdens of leadership, the worries that even the most powerful people have.
And by putting those little cues into our own role-playing, we can turn our characters from basic types into fully realized people with flaws, complexity, and a captivating presence.
It's about finding those moments of truth, those glimpses beneath the surface, the tiny cracks that show us the real heart of a character.
It's about embracing the imperfections, the vulnerabilities, the messiness of being human, even in a world of fantasy.
And through those imperfections, our characters come to life.
And speaking of bringing characters to life, the article goes into this concept called status maintenance.
Right. It's about how people use their body language to show and keep their place in society. It's so interesting because we do it without even realizing it, but it makes a huge difference in how we treat each other.
Think about it. A character who's used to privilege and power, they might carry themselves a certain way even when they're relaxed or alone. It's about showing confidence and control, even when they might not be feeling that way at all.
It's like they have this invisible shield, this aura of power that makes people respect them, whether they're doing it on purpose or not.
And it can be really fun to play with those subtle signals of status in our games.
Like picture a powerful noble trying to blend in with regular people.
They might try to act more casual, slouch a bit, soften their gaze.
But all those years of being taught how to act, those habits would probably still show up in how they move and what their face does.
Maybe they straighten their back without thinking when someone talks to them, or get impatient when they have to wait in line.
Yeah, it's those little slips, those times when they accidentally reveal their true nature that can tell us so much about a character.
And it's those moments that make a character truly interesting. We see the cracks in their mask, the glimpses of the real person underneath.
And those glimpses can make us question what we thought we knew, challenge how we see things, and ultimately connect with the character on a deeper level.
Because in the end, we're all just trying to figure out how to deal with other people, whether we're kings or commoners, heroes or villains, humans or magical creatures.
And nonverbal communication, with all its subtle meanings, is a huge part of that complicated dance. It's amazing how much we say without even realizing it, right? The article makes a great point about how paying attention to those little cues can make us better role players and even better at dealing with people in real life.
Totally. It's like cracking a secret code, figuring out the hidden messages people are sending with their bodies. And once you start noticing, it's like a whole new world opens up.
It's like you're suddenly seeing everything in high definition, noticing all the little things you missed before. And that awareness can be so helpful in social situations. Understanding why people do things, building stronger relationships.
Like you're developing a sixth sense, a feeling for reading people and knowing what they're really thinking and feeling.
And that intuition is super valuable, both in games and in real life. We've talked about a lot of theory, but let's get practical. How can we use this to become better role players?
Well, the article has some good advice about that. One big thing is that practice makes perfect. It's not enough to just read about it. We have to actually work on using it in our games.
Right. It's like any skill. The more you practice, the better you get. So what are some exercises or techniques people can try?
One thing is to focus on just one part of nonverbal communication at a time. Maybe for a few sessions, you really concentrate on your character's posture. Really pay attention to how they stand, how they move, how their body shows their personality, and how they're feeling.
Right. Break it down into smaller pieces and really master the basics. Then once you feel good about posture, you can move on to facial expressions, hand gestures, and all that.
Exactly. And the article says to use a mirror to practice, which can be really helpful.
It's like having your own acting coach. You can try different expressions, different gestures, different ways of holding your body. See how they make you feel and how other people might see them.
And don't be afraid to ask your friends for feedback. Ask them what they notice, what's working, what you could do better. RPGs are all about working together, and we can learn so much from each other.
Absolutely. Another great tip from the article is to watch other people, both in real life and in movies and shows. Pay attention to how actors use their bodies to show emotions, how politicians use their posture to look powerful, how your family and friends express themselves without saying a word.
It's like taking a master class in nonverbal communication, getting ideas and techniques that you can then use in your own games.
It's about developing that sharp eye for detail, that sensitivity to the little cues that tell us so much about what's going on inside someone.
And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. You start picking up on those unspoken signals without even thinking about it. And that's when the real magic happens, when you can react authentically in the moment, letting your body language flow naturally from your character's emotions and intentions.
And that's what makes role-playing so fun. It's not just about following a script. It's about being in the moment, reacting to surprises, and creating a story with your friends.
And when everyone is tuned into each other's nonverbal cues, it creates this amazing energy where the game world comes alive in a way that goes beyond the words on the page.
It's like everyone is speaking the same language, even without saying a word.
And that's a beautiful thing.
It really is. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of nonverbal storytelling in RPGs, I want to thank you, our amazing listeners, for joining us on this journey.
And a special shout out to Paul Bello, fine fellow, for inspiring this exploration of the unspoken language of role-playing.
We've covered a lot today. From posture to facial expressions, to hand gestures, to the complexities of social status. But remember, this is just the beginning. There's so much more to discover, so much more to explore when it comes to nonverbal communication.
It's a lifelong journey of learning and experimenting. And we hope you'll keep going on that journey, keep practicing, keep observing, and most importantly, keep having fun.
Because at the end of the day, that's what role-playing is all about. It's about letting our imaginations run wild, creating incredible stories together, and connecting with each other in a deeper way.
And nonverbal communication, with all its subtlety and hidden depths, is a powerful tool that can help us do all of that and more.
So until next time, keep rolling those dice, keep those creative sparks flying, and remember, the story isn't just in the words you say, it's in every gesture, every expression, every movement of your being.
But before we jump into all that, I'd love to hear from you. What are some of the most memorable examples of nonverbal role-playing you've seen in your games?
Ooh, that's a tough one. One that comes to mind is from a game where I was playing a paladin. We were up against this super powerful demon, and the odds were not in our favor. My paladin, she was known for being really stoic and unshakable in her faith, but facing this terrifying creature, I had her start trembling just slightly, just a tiny tremor in her hand while she was holding her holy symbol.
Wow, that's a powerful image. That inner battle between faith and fear. Did the other players pick up on it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It started this whole discussion about what it meant for this character who's usually so strong to show even a hint of weakness. It added this whole other layer to the scene, and it gave the other players a chance to connect with my character on a much deeper level.
That's a perfect example of how a simple nonverbal cue can turn a fight into something with real emotional depth. It's those little choices that reveal what's hidden beneath the surface.
Exactly. It's the little things that make a character feel real. And the article talks about using different levels of intensity when you're expressing emotions non-verbally.
Right. You can have subtle hints, like a small change in facial expression or a shift in posture. Perfect for when you want to imply something's going on without explicitly saying it.
Like imagine a character who's trying to hide their jealousy while their friend is getting all the praise. Maybe they manage a smile, but their jaw is clenched tight.
Yeah.
Or they're subtly making fists under the table.
Exactly. And then there are those times when you need a bigger display of emotion, like when your character witnesses something horrible or they're in a heated argument. Then you might see shouting, pacing, dramatic gestures.
I played a game once where my character's entire village was attacked and destroyed by bandits. We had spent weeks building up this community, and to see it all wiped out was just devastating. I didn't even have to think about it. My character just completely broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, collapsing in the middle of the wreckage. It was raw, it was emotional, and it completely changed the tone of the game.
I can imagine. Expressing that raw emotion through your actions rather than words probably had a much bigger impact on the other players. It's about connecting with those universal human experiences and letting them flow through your character.
It's about letting go of any preconceived ideas and just being present in the moment. That's when the truly powerful role-playing moments happen, when the line blurs between you and your character, and you're really inhabiting that role, body and soul.
And it's not just limited to individual characters either. Think about how one character's emotional expression can influence the whole group dynamic.
Oh, absolutely. If one character is openly grieving, it opens the door for others to express their own sadness or anger. Or if someone is projecting confidence and determination, it can inspire others to rise to the challenge alongside them.
It's those unspoken connections that create a sense of unity and shared purpose. And those connections are often forged through those shared moments of vulnerability expressed through nonverbal cues.
It's all about building a supportive community at the table, a place where everyone feels comfortable expressing themselves, both verbally and non-verbally. That kind of environment can really make a difference in creating a truly immersive and memorable game.
Well said. You know, we've talked a lot about humans, but our games are often filled with creatures that are far from human.
Right. Elves, dwarves, orcs, dragons, all sorts of fantastical beings. The article touches on this fascinating concept of species-specific movement.
It's about looking beyond typical human expressions and movements and exploring the unique physicality of different races and species. Imagine embodying the feline grace of a tabaxi as they hunt, or a kenku replaying a conversation they overheard through mimicry.
I love that. It's about finding creative ways to portray your character's personality and background through their physicality, even if they're not human.
Exactly. It challenges us to think outside the box and step out of our comfort zones. How would a towering Goliath move compared to a nimble gnome? How would a dragonborn express anger compared to a halfling?
It's all about considering how their anatomy, their culture, their very essence shapes their movements and expressions.
And it can lead to some really interesting and dynamic interactions. Picture a group of adventurers trying to negotiate with a tribe of orcs. Orcs, known for their strength and aggression, might stand with arms crossed, legs apart, shins jutting out as a display of dominance.
And the adventurers could either mirror that posture to show they're not intimidated, or they might choose a more submissive stance to try and de-escalate the situation.
It's all about understanding that unspoken language of body language and using it to create those nuanced interactions that make the game world feel real and alive.
It's like adding another layer of detail to the tapestry of the game. We're not just telling a story, we're creating a visual experience with our bodies.
And that visual experience can be incredibly evocative. Imagine a party of adventurers exploring a dark and ominous forest. Gnarled trees, thick mist, the only sounds are rustling leaves and the distant cawing of crows.
And as they go deeper into the forest, they begin to notice subtle shifts in their companion's body language. Shoulders tightening, eyes darting, hands instinctively reaching for weapons.
Without a word being spoken, the tension mounts, the atmosphere thickens, and the players are drawn further into the narrative.
It's like those classic horror movie scenes where you know something bad is about to happen, but you don't know what or when. And that sense of anticipation and dread is heightened by the character's nonverbal cues.
It's a masterclass in suspense, crafted through the unspoken language of the body.
And it's something that we can all learn to do in our own games.
Definitely. The article emphasizes that practice is key when it comes to nonverbal communication. It's about refining our skills, deepening our understanding, and pushing ourselves to explore those subtle nuances of expression.
It's like learning a new language, but instead of words, we're using our bodies to communicate. And the more fluent we become, the richer and more rewarding our gaming experiences will be.
And the beauty of it is that you don't need any special equipment or training to start practicing. The article suggests simple exercises like using a mirror to observe and refine your expressions and gestures.
Right. It's like having your own personal acting coach right there in your bathroom.
And you can also practice with your gaming group.
Oh, absolutely. The article talks about the benefits of scene practice, where you work together as a group to explore how different movements can shape the narrative.
It's a chance to experiment, to try new things, to see what works and what doesn't. And most importantly, it's an opportunity to have fun and learn from each other.
It's about fostering a collaborative environment where everyone feels comfortable taking risks and stretching their creative muscles.
That's where the real growth happens. When we step outside our comfort zones and allow ourselves to be vulnerable, to make mistakes, and to learn from each other.
It's about embracing the journey, not just the destination. And the journey of mastering nonverbal communication in role-playing games is one that can lead to incredible discoveries, both about ourselves and about the power of storytelling.
Beautifully put. As we continue exploring nonverbal communication, it's crucial to remember that even the smallest details can have a huge impact. It's not always about those big, dramatic gestures. Sometimes it's the most subtle cues that speak the loudest.
Like a barely perceptible twitch of the lips, a slight narrowing of the eyes, or a nearly inaudible sigh.
It's those nuances that can add layers of depth and complexity to our characters, making them feel more real, more relatable, and ultimately more human.
It's like we're peeling back the layers of an onion, uncovering those hidden depths beneath the surface.
And those hidden depths can be incredibly revealing. The article highlights how even the smallest details, like the way a character holds their head or the way they walk, can convey a wealth of information about their social standing, their emotional state, their very essence.
It's like we're deciphering a secret language written on the body.
Yeah.
And the more fluent we become in that language, the deeper our understanding of our characters and the world they inhabit becomes.
Imagine a king meeting with his advisors. He might sit on his throne, back straight, chin raised, his gaze steady, projecting authority and confidence.
But if we pay close attention, we might notice subtle cues that hint at a different story.
Perhaps a slight tremor in his hand as he reaches for his goblet, or a fleeting furrow of his brow as he listens to his advisor's counsel.
Those tiny details reveal the weight of his responsibilities, the burdens of leadership, the anxieties that even the most powerful rulers face.
And by incorporating those subtle cues into our own role-playing, we can elevate our characters from simple archetypes to well-rounded individuals, flawed, complex, and utterly captivating.
It's about finding those moments of truth, those glimpses beneath the surface, the cracks in the facade that reveal the true heart of a character.
It's about embracing the imperfections, the vulnerabilities, the messy realities of being human, even in a world of fantasy and imagination.
And it's through those imperfections that our characters truly come alive.
Speaking of bringing characters to life, the article discusses a concept called status maintenance.
Right. This is all about how people use their body language to maintain their social standing, often subconsciously. It's fascinating because it plays a huge role in how we interact with one another.
Think about it. A character who is used to privilege and authority might carry themselves with a certain regal bearing, even in casual or private settings. It's about projecting an image of confidence and control, even if that's not how they're truly feeling.
It's like they have this invisible aura of power that commands respect, whether they're consciously aware of it or not.
And it can be really interesting to play with those subtle signals of status in our role-playing.
For example, imagine a powerful noble trying to blend in with commoners.
They might try to act more casually, relax their posture, soften their gaze.
But years of ingrained social conditioning would probably still show through in their movements and expressions.
Maybe they unconsciously straighten their spine when someone addresses them, or show a flicker of impatience when they have to wait their turn.
It's those little slips, those moments of unconscious self-betrayal that can reveal so much about a character's true nature.
And it's those moments that make a character truly compelling. We see past the facade, catching glimpses of the person beneath the mask.
And those glimpses can make us question our assumptions, challenge our perceptions, and ultimately connect with a character on a deeper, more human level.
Because ultimately, we're all just navigating the complexities of social interactions, whether we're kings or commoners, heroes or villains, humans or fantastical creatures.
And nonverbal communication, with all its subtle nuances and hidden meanings, plays a crucial role in that intricate dance. It's amazing how much we say without even realizing it right. The article makes a great point about how paying attention to those subtle cues can not only make us better role players, but it can also help us in our real lives.
Absolutely. It's like you're learning a secret code. A way to understand those hidden messages people are sending with their body language. Once you start paying attention, it's like a whole new world.
Yeah, like you suddenly see everything in high definition. You notice all those little details you might have missed before. And that awareness can be really useful in social situations. You can understand people better, build better relationships.
It's like developing a sixth sense
Right.
for reading people and knowing what they're really thinking and feeling.
So true. We've talked about a lot of theory. But let's get practical for a minute. How can we use this to become better role players?
Well, the article has some great advice on that. One of the key takeaways is that practice makes perfect. It's not enough to just read about nonverbal communication. We need to actively work on using it in our games.
Right, like any skill. The more you practice, the better you get.
Yeah.
So what are some specific things people can try?
One suggestion is to pick one aspect of nonverbal communication and really focus on it. Maybe for a few sessions, you decide to really concentrate on your character's posture. Pay close attention to how they stand, how they move, how their body reflects who they are, and how they're feeling.
Yeah, break it down into smaller pieces and get really good at the basics. Once you feel comfortable with posture, you can move on to facial expressions, hand gestures, all of that.
Exactly. And the article suggests practicing in front of a mirror, which can be super helpful.
It's like having your own personal acting coach. You can try out different expressions, different gestures, different ways of holding your body, see how they feel to you and how they might look to someone else.
And don't be afraid to ask your friends for feedback. Ask them what they notice, what they think is working well, what you could maybe do differently. Role-playing is all about collaboration, and we can learn a lot from each other.
That's so true. Another great tip from the article is to observe people, both in real life and in movies and TV shows. Pay attention to how actors use their body language to show emotions, how politicians use their posture to project authority, how your friends and family express themselves without saying a word.
It's like watching a masterclass in nonverbal communication. You can pick up ideas and techniques that you can use in your games.
It's all about developing that eye for detail, that sensitivity to the subtle cues that can tell us so much about what someone is really thinking and feeling.
And the more you practice, the more it becomes second nature. You start to pick up on those unspoken signals without even trying. That's when it gets really fun. When you can react authentically in the moment, letting your body language flow naturally from what your character is feeling.
It's what makes role-playing so enjoyable. It's not about sticking to a script. It's about being in the moment, going with the flow, and creating a story with your friends.
And when everyone's paying attention to those nonverbal cues, it creates this incredible energy. It's like the game world comes to life in a way that goes beyond the words.
Yeah, like everyone's speaking the same language without actually saying anything.
It's really something special.
It is. Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of nonverbal storytelling in RPGs, I want to thank you all for listening and joining us on this adventure.
And a huge thanks to Paul Bellow, fine fellow, for inspiring this exploration.
We've covered a lot today, from posture to facial expressions to hand gestures, all the way to social status and how that plays out in our games. But remember, this is just the beginning. There's so much more to discover and explore in the world of nonverbal communication.
It's a lifelong journey, and we encourage you to keep practicing, keep observing, and most importantly, keep having fun.
That's what role-playing's all about, right? Letting our imaginations run wild, creating those unforgettable stories together, and connecting with each other in a way that only RPGs can do.
And nonverbal communication is a powerful tool to help us do all of that.
So until next time, keep those dice rolling, keep those creative sparks flying, and remember, the story isn't just in the words you say, it's in every gesture, every expression, every movement you make,